Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about Bitcoin because we've seen a lot of crazy things going on in the Bitcoin market. Obviously, Bitcoin kind of remains to be unstoppable. This is, I don't think, anything unusual to any of us who've been paying attention recently, but I wanted to cover that a little bit more in detail. Also, we're seeing a ton of interesting things going on from MicroStrategy too. So anyway, let's go ahead, dive right in and check out kind of how things are looking. So starting out, what we can see is kind of a mixed day overall in the market. And really, I think what we're starting to see here is kind of a tale of two markets, right? We've got Bitcoin, which obviously up 2% on the day, doing really quite well. And then we've got the altcoins, which are still kind of, struggling a little bit. Even recently, like, SUI and Solana had kind of kept up with Bitcoin and kind of kept that main like strength that Bitcoin had been showing. But now that's kind of, they've started to kind of bleed back a tiny bit. That's not at all to say like they're turned into dogs or anything like that. I think they're still going to probably lead the bull run. But we've seen them kind of pull back. ADA has kind of been the one that's got the spotlight on it now, and so it's been doing really quite well. But overall, it definitely is kind of a tale of two markets. We are seeing a general level of exhaustion, I would say, kind of throughout the altcoin market. It seems like things are kind of starting to pull back a little bit. Things are kind of coming down at least a little bit from some of the euphorias and the highs and all that stuff that we saw recently. But Bitcoin, no such thing is happening, right? Obviously, Bitcoin is still super, super strong. A lot of really interesting things still going on with Bitcoin, a lot of good news, all that type of stuff. We can kind of see this in MicroStrategy, which again, we'll get to later on in the video. But overall, things looking really, really fantastic. And we can kind of see a little bit of kind of all of this here on this market overview dashboard that I have. And so we can see open interest on Bitcoin specifically has exploded. It's almost doubled in the past 6 weeks, which is just insane overall. Also, we can see on the heat map, though, most major coins have actually come down. They were in the overbought and strong, and they're now moving down into kind of the neutral category, which I think kind of makes sense, right? We're seeing I would say a general level of kind of exhaustion going on within the altcoin market, which again makes sense. We're going to be talking about this in a second also, but Bitcoin dominance is still at its highs. We really have not seen Bitcoin bleed to alts at all yet. And so usually when altcoin season comes around, that's when we see that happening. But so far we just haven't really seen that kind of come to pass. And so that's not to say that we won't, but just that's kind of what we're waiting on. In the meantime, though, things are still looking pretty good, I would say, for the overall market. I mean, the overall market's been moving well. Things are looking good. I mean, we are in a point of extreme greed, so we may see, kind of a continued pullback kind of from what we've been seeing currently. But overall, nothing too concerning here. We can see on the liquidation map as well, definitely favoring a move to the downside and liquidating longs. That is kind of where the majority of the liquidity still does sit. But however, we can see on the 1 day, still a little bit more balanced here, closer to kind of where price is. So generally, I mean, it kind of seems to me what we're seeing in the market right now is Bitcoin's going to continue to be strong. We might even see $100,000 Bitcoin by the end of the month, but alts otherwise are going to be relatively mixed. They might need to cool down, some of that type of stuff. Looking at the open interest and volume, we can see something similar kind of in the wider market. Obviously, we just looked at how Bitcoin's open interest has exploded. But the overall market has exploded as well. I mean, we saw previous all-time highs back in March sitting at about 80 billion. And now we're sitting up here well over 100 billion, getting closer to 110 billion in open interest, which obviously huge numbers here. We can see not only Bitcoin, but basically everything that we can find in here has broken all-time highs. And so, open interest kind of across everything is just up huge overall. And so, we're going to be kind of looking to see how that continues. Obviously, Bitcoin kind of leading the market, as we all know, but things looking really, really strong. The other thing that's important to mention too is we can see volume has kind of gone up over everything. And so even kind of the low days that we're seeing down here, these low days are what we were seeing as kind of like the high days kind of earlier on in the year, basically for the most of the year, that basically excluding March overall, right? And now the high days, obviously we're at or breaking kind of all-time highs for volume, which again is kind of expected given, all we've seen with open interest and whatnot. But obviously all very, very good news for the market overall. Obviously Bitcoin looking bulletproof, but the overall market is still kind of doing the same. And so even though alts are kind of struggling right now, we just have to remember that this is usually how things go, right? And so not a huge deal overall. If we do look at Bitcoin dominance, we're still sitting up close to that 60% range. Usually, Bitcoin dominance will top kind of when Bitcoin price does. And then from there, the rest of the cycle, Bitcoin is going to bleed to alts because alts are then essentially going to kind of continue to pick up more steam in comparison to Bitcoin and what we're seeing there. And so Obviously, haven't seen that yet. We're still very much in Bitcoin season, and I think until we see a price top of Bitcoin, which realistically I think, on the low end maybe that's 100K. I think we're probably going to more like 120 to 150 range. We have some people are thinking 300K. It's really hard to say, but for me, at least personally, I'm going to be looking at Bitcoin realistically topping out once we start to hit that 120 range. Like I said, it may continue to kind of keep moving up, but I'm going to be starting to, at least assessing, readjusting my situation kind of at that point. So looking at the chart, we can kind of see things looking really good. I mean, obviously we saw that little bit of pullback going up into the election. After the election happens, it's just kind of rocketed. We have seen over about the past week or so, things have just been kind of choppy, moving generally kind of in the same area, kind of holding this level of support here at like the 86 range and bouncing between like 86 and 92. Overall, we have broken out above that. And so we are now again hitting new and fresh all-time highs, which is obviously always really, really good to see. We are seeing here, volume coming back into the market. Overall, volume has just kind of exploded over these past several days. I think a lot of this is just due to positive sentiment, but also there's been a lot of crazy things happening with MicroStrategy as well. And so I do think a lot of that MicroStrategy news is kind of playing into this a little bit. We can see here RSI as price kind of just cooled off and leveled out a little bit. We could see that RSI was starting to kind of pull back a little bit. We still are in the overbought range. And so, maybe we see a larger pullback. Really hard to say. But things did kind of cool off, at least as far as looking at the RSI is concerned, as we've continued to kind of move on the way up, which is, I would say, pretty good news overall. We can see, if you are interested in trading on Margex, I do have my link in the description below. We can see I do have my my trade still open, up over 250% at this point. Looking good so far. I think it's possible that maybe we see 100,000 by the end of the month. I think it's kind of what could be a possibility here. And so I might be looking for that. If price does start to look like it's gonna struggle a little bit, I might continue to close more out. But so far, I'm just kind of letting it ride because I think we can kind of see a little bit more coming out of this this trade so far. And so if you are interested, like I said, you can check my Margex link in the description below. There is no VPN or KYC to sign up and trade on Margex. You basically just get signed up and start trading. It's really nice, really slick. Also up to 100x leverage, so you can go on and trade whatever you want. You also could do varying asset pairs, which is a pretty interesting concept because, like, let's say you want to use Solana to trade Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes up but Solana also goes up, you're kind of making money on both sides, which is pretty cool and a relatively interesting thing to see. So if you are interested, like I said, link in the description. Moving on though, I did want to talk about MicroStrategy a little bit because we're seeing quite a bit going on with MicroStrategy, and this is kind of reminiscent of like the GameStop days, at least in my opinion. What we are seeing is that MicroStrategy is currently the most traded stock in the US. We're also seeing on the move ups, absolutely just massive gaps up on MicroStrategy. From what it sounds like, there's been a lot of the Wall Street bets type of people getting in on MicroStrategy. That there's been a lot of like the longs and stuff going on, massive short squeezes from what it seems. But looking, what we can see is that MicroStrategy is also looking to kind of capture or like seize on this like good news and this bullish price action, and they're looking to increase their raise to buy more Bitcoin. And ultimately, MicroStrategy is looking to just hoard mass amounts of Bitcoin and essentially develop Bitcoin products based on their holdings. And so, definitely a very interesting concept what they're looking to do. I do think we probably will see a relatively sizable pullback on MicroStrategy just because of how they've moved recently. They've moved far outpacing, what Bitcoin has done currently. And so I do think there is a level of like over speculation there. But overall, I don't think that changes the base case for what MicroStrategy is looking to do. And I do think overall, they'll probably see some massive returns over the next 5-10 years, particularly if Bitcoin plays out on the same type of thesis that Michael Saylor has kind of been saying for years. It's going to be multi-millions of dollars per Bitcoin, all this type of stuff. If MicroStrategy owns a ton, they're going to do very, very well for themselves, particularly when they're using an underlying asset, i.e. the US dollar, to buy it, and the dollar is essentially wasting away to zero, and Bitcoin keeps going up. It's kind of a double whammy on both sides. So obviously, really, really good news. Things looking great overall in the market. Bitcoin looking rock solid. Obviously, alt's kind of stuttering a little bit, but nothing that I would say is really too concerning at all. This is, I would say, kind of to be expected. We haven't really seen any of the insanity yet that alt season brings. And so I think that's still in store. So anyway, hopefully you guys are being careful, being safe, not getting liquidated, doing anything too crazy. And hopefully you did find the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really does help me out. Also, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, feel free to drop those in the comment section below. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.